Right, Sheila, it's 4 o'clock. I'm going to give you a countdown. Everyone, we're going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good luck.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm welcoming you to the European Reference Network Delivering a Health Data Strategy webinar, Developing a Shared Vision with All Stakeholders. I'm joined by a very esteemed panel, very experienced panel in terms of European reference networks and policy. And I would be welcoming all of the audience today to submit any questions or observations on some of the talks that we're going to hear from today. I'd like to open the floor to Professor Maurizio Scarpa, who is the coordinator of the European Reference Network for Hereditary Metabolic Disorders, who will start off by giving you a short snippet of where he sees the opportunities and challenges in creating an ERN data strategy. Professor Scarpa.
Thank you very much, Sheila. I hope that you hear me well. And I want also to say hello to all the participants and colleagues and friends that are participating to this very exciting meeting. I think that this is a very unique opportunity to start an interesting project, which is now that we are at the end of the first 5-year program of the European Reference Network. After 5 years of collaboration with patient organizations in understanding how we can create network, how we can really work together inside a network with all the biggest experts in rare diseases, and understanding what is the need of the patients and how potentially to solve some of their needs. I think that now it's the time to collect all this experience and to look forward, especially how the European Reference Network can create a vision and can really create a different way of living for the patient, which means a quicker diagnosis, a better management, an easier way to access therapy, and also to develop new therapies by stimulating clinical trials. So enrolling patients, meaningful patients, in order to understand whether the therapy we want to study is working or not. These are very big challenges, and these require quite a lot of understanding about clinical histories and what are the needs of the patients at different stages of diseases. So it means that we need, instead of studying only the patient, to study all the data that these patients are generating inside our hospitals. We know that the European Reference Network are made by healthcare providers, the best in Europe. Every day, every moment, every second, we are generating data. In our countries, all the member states, this data, most of the time, are just generated. They are used to have clinical summaries, but then they are not used and they are not useful to anyone else that might be interested in this kind of research. We have here today a big opportunity because we are setting the scene in how all us, the 24 ERN coordinators, can work together in order to work indeed to analyze this data and to use this data to understand how to better treat the patients or how to better diagnose the patients. And this is an opportunity we have to work together because we have an important network that just was started up, which is the ERICA network, in which all the 24 ERNs are connected to facilitate the research of everybody. The European Commission is with us. The plan of the Horizon Europe is not all devoted, but mostly devoted to digitalization. The technology is there. What we need to do is to find a way to collaborate not only with healthcare providers, but also with experts that can really help us in entering this new world. And especially for us, and I think to myself as a 1900 physician, so a last century physician, to move forward to the 2000 physician, meaning a modern physician. So we have the need to understand how to use this technology, and especially how to raise new scientists, new physicians, used to be good scientists, but also expert in informatics and scientific world. So I think that today we can really think to create a project that I think as today as the beginning of a program of collaboration. And I'm very happy that we were able to collect around this table for brainstorming a so distinguished panel of friends and experts in order to set the scene and to understand which kind of steps we need to do forward. So I will be happy to participate and to moderate this meeting, because really from this meeting we can also be inspired in taking some notes, and then since we as coordinators need to prepare a 5-year program for the next 5 years of the year ends, to take some inspiration, some ideas to discuss inside our year-end coordinator group, and then to put together common ideas to develop, and so to help each other in order to apply what we really think may be important for the patient in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Professor Scarpa. You've set a very big challenge for us all today to explore and consider. I'm delighted to now welcome Brio van Dam, the Director General for Healthcare at the National Institute for Health and Disability Insurance. Brio, you're going to talk to us a little bit about what HTAs and payers will be looking for in this kind of data capture and real-world evidence, and what are the kind of needs for a potential ERN data strategy? How would that satisfy HTA and payers? Over to you.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Professor Scarpa. I was really delighted to hear that you set the bar so high for today's seminar. So I can only rally behind your ambition, and hope indeed we will find consensus on how to push this agenda forward. As you may know, the National Institute for Health and Disability Insurance is a payer, obviously, and real-world evidence has taken a much larger part in our daily work when we are assessing the reimbursement of new medicines and of new health technologies. That's why we were one of the sponsors at first and thought leaders, I think, in this initiative, and we have the ambition to continue supporting it. The output so far has been interesting and impressive, given the small team, and especially I think brings answers to very contemporary issues we payers are confronted with. Just to give you two examples you will probably be quite familiar with. But first of all, new technologies coming to market often have a lot more uncertainty that goes with it, especially if you look at one-off therapies, gene therapies. It's hard to assess the longer-term effects, both in terms of efficacy as in terms of cost effectiveness. That's why collecting real-world evidence over a longer period of time, and especially in niche diseases where small countries like ours only have a couple of patients that are being treated. I think European reference networks and the data collection that could be organized on that level will be of a huge value to try to capture that uncertainty better and potentially readapt our contracts if necessary, and if the efficacy is not sufficiently aligned anymore with the cost of the new therapy. Second, a very important issue for payers, I think is, and I've alluded to it in my previous point, is risk sharing. If we want to move to more and more subtle contracts that equitably share the risk between the contracting parties, I think we will need to use real-world evidence. And of course, again, this is better done on a larger scale for the robustness of the data and for comparison purposes. So those are two very important issues we are confronted with, and I hope indeed that European reference networks and this initiative will help finding solutions in order to do so. Obviously, at member state level, we need to do our homework as well, and I think the European Commission's initiative to try to create a European health data space is a very interesting one. If I've understood it well, it has the ambition to create a network of networks. And rest assured that in Belgium, and I know other countries are doing the same or have done the same, we want to indeed create this one-stop shop for real-world evidence that will allow us to connect and integrate very easily into the European network. Of course, we'll have to think about governance, we'll have to think about process, we'll have to think about legal matters, but all that I think we can in this network prepare some of these very important issues at hand. I think it's time to conclude. I'm extremely happy that we have so many distinguished speakers present here today, and I look forward to a very interesting discussion. Unfortunately, I will have to leave a little early because of medical reasons. Nothing very important or bad, I should say. Important, yes, but not threatening, so rest assured, as some of you were worried, but I will have to be replaced by my distinguished colleague, Professor Van de Kastelen, who is present here as well. And I will end with this. I can only reiterate the ambition of Professor Scarpa to try to find a consensus statement at the end of this interesting symposium. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for outlining some of the opportunities and of course, the challenges that are posed within this. So in this next section, we have, as we've alluded to, a very distinguished panel, and we're really delighted to be able to open the floor now to Dr. André Riche, Director for the Health System and Medicinal Products and Innovation. And the question that we're really asking our panel to explore now, what are the ERN's health data needs? And what's the role of the European health data space to help realize a health data strategy? Maurizio, you've outlined a really big challenge. We've got a great opportunity given the kind of close of that 5-year running of ERNs. And it's a really great platform for us now to set about a new ambition to create that collaboration. So Andre, I welcome you to this panel session. I also believe you have to leave and unfortunately can't stay for the rest of the panel, but that's absolutely fine. Your colleagues are here to support us. But over to you in terms of what kind of interventions you think the Commission can put forward. What should the health data space include? And where do you see the consensus for us, and where do you see some of the challenges?
Thank you very much, Sheila. Good afternoon, colleagues, and all of you watching this debate. We are confronted with the decision, to create a European health data space. Already was mentioned. This is quite challenging exercise, not just for European Commission, but by the whole Europe. I don't like that this work is seen as a exclusive job for the Commission. I mean, the success of this venture is only possible, as already was mentioned, if first different communities will connect, member states will find a way to participate in this process with resources and of course with the political support, but what is the most important, the users of the system, especially patients, but also researchers, policymakers, developers of new therapies will be available to also enrich their different processes thanks to this. So I think the car and horse is important to put in the right place. So speak about horse. So we are now in the momentum of the history where the data are available, but we are still confronted with the same challenges as we have seen when data were in the paper form. So what we see, and what is important in this process that we have to kind of develop the system, this in our thinking when we do impact assessment and try to see the potential places when we should work on the new system or future system. First, we would like to build on the 4 pillars. So the data are cross-border available, so they can be shared. They are access and control of patients, or so the patients is basically understand that they have rights and all security at the same time, because I think the system is a little bit now confronted with the two almost opposite ends. In one hand, we would like to increase security of data access to patients, but at the same time we would like to available speaking about primary data, but for the secondary data, we would like them be available to as many users are needed under, of course, regime would like to establish together. So the second pillar is the reuse of data for research, for regulatory activities, for policy making, and sometimes those data can be used in the kind of long term. In other areas that we need to get rapid access to them. The situation with COVID show that we were able to create data almost daily and share with data with all different levels, and we have seen also number of results, but also we have seen weaknesses. For example, how to do better and effective assessment of how vaccines work, and what kind of booster and when we can use and so on. So I think it's important also to see this as a kind of challenge. The third pillar is based on the kind of fostering the market for the digital health services and products. I mean, we see a lot of potential in the system. But of course, the future products already those exist. Digital products, they're often based on data. To build any AI algorithm, you need to have data. With different, the best, of course, from different parts of Europe, and then with as many possible as needed for the right quality algorithm. And finally, this should support also develop, all kinds of new solutions, including AI, but also new type of services which allows simple, better access for patients and healthcare providers. And so now we're coming to year ends. Why year ends are important. I mean, many of you know that I feel almost like a born together with year ends. I feel as a part of the family. But I see that we since the beginning we were confronted with a number of experiments, starting from the platform can be used by clinicians to help difficult patients with the diagnosis, with the prognosis, with helping with different medical knowledge. We're confronted with how to build knowledge across the borders and different systems. And finally, we also were confronted, how to kind of bring different culture of the institutions. For example, in IT, it's not easy to build one platform. The second problem is, this platform has to be used in different parts of Europe, in different culture, in different settings and skills. So I think this already year-end somehow they are ahead with the kind of experiment, how to work together. And finally, the last word about year-ends in this context. I think we also learn, the creation of registries or any digital tools and data gathering is not easy, is not cheap, needs to be supported, but also is reaching or crossing different barriers. legal culture, the way, you know, we feel about the data, or we understand the needs of collection of data and so on. So we also are confronted with a different policy thinking in different member states. So I think we have seen I think in our meetings all kinds of colors, all kinds of opinions, and I think there's a really good place, you know, to experiment. And for sure, Iran community is one of the first which will be kind of click into the system as a system, and a legal framework will be ready. Thank you.
Many thanks, Andre. That was a really insightful, and the tension between, as you say, collecting the data and then sharing it across different areas for research or for patient access or for innovations, trying to manage those challenges from a legal standpoint and from different member state rules and the way they conduct their research and so on is really important. Hélène, I welcome you to the panel. Hélène Dolphus is the IERN coordinator and chair of the ERN coordinators group. I'm really keen to hear, Hélène, what you see as the priorities for the ERN in the next 5 years, in line with the challenge that Maurizio and then obviously Andre and Briouk have outlined. Where do you see ERNs going?
Yeah, so thank you very much, and hello to everybody. So yeah, I will speak here on behalf of the group of the ERN coordinators I'm chairing this year. So as you know, we are 24 ERNs. We were launched by the Commission in 2017, and now we are really ending our first life, our childhood, and we will have to invent our future with the Commission, of course, for the next 5 years, as our mandate is ending in March 2022. So it's a huge success on many points, and this we have been carrying surveys during the summer across the ERNs. There are very positive points. There are points that are still challenges, but of course our aim remains to be, before everything, to improve the care of the patients. So we are entering a maturation time, and we are really thinking of different points, and I will approach this with the data angle, the health data angle now. So one first point is that we are running a little bit ahead compared to the European health data space settings. This is the way it goes. So I think we can be considered the ERNs a little bit like a flagship of the Commission as the first health networks, European health networks. And it is true that we are at the time setting different, contributing to run different systems on data of patients with rare diseases in Europe. But we are confronted to the fact that finally the European health data space is getting getting launched. So we are at the same time being actively, constructing our different programs, especially the registry. So I will come back to that in a second. So this is, for us, ERNs, health data is really a center goal. And for many users, the care of the patient, but of course research, and this has been pointed. So I'll just point to four goals we have identified, again, just to prioritize here on the health data. So first of all, we have to keep in mind that we're going to have an expansion of our ERNs. We are roughly, each of us is going to double in size. So we will have a much better coverage across the European Union. And of course, a lot of new hospitals that are going to get involved. So as it was just stated just before, there is a lot of different policies in the different national care systems. and a lot of cultural and also regulatory obligations. So these expansions of the ERNs is meeting one of the goals that has been pointed by my colleagues, is really to first of all integrate better the national healthcare pathways, and this of course includes the pathway of the data, of the health data in the national system, and confronted to the future of the European health data space. The second point, on this aspect, my colleagues have emphasized, is that we want to reach out the countries where that are most in need, and probably Central and Eastern Europe are the countries where we want to implement the tools we are at the time being constructing and already users for. So my second point is about the CPMS, the virtual clinic, the tool we are provided for to resolve difficult cases. There would be a lot to say. In some ways, it's working. In others, we would like a simplified tool, and we are working with this with the Commission at the time being. But addressing this point has really put in light two main points I would like to underline here. First of all, the tools we are going to generate have to be really user friendly and accessible to all, because if we are going to use this tool to collect data in the European Union, either with the CPMS or with the registries, we really have to commit the professionals. We really have to be able to access to the data, and this in all the countries we're working with. So this is really an important point, and for the CPMS, but also for the registries, engaging professionals, engaging the HCPs, the different hospitals, implies really that the professionals are in the system and will be able to collect the data. And this is a real, it can become a problem, because if we do not have the budget and also the operational instruments to get in the system all the data we need, this is something we really want to emphasize. No data, there will be no CPMS, no registry. So this is we need user-friendly tools, and tools that can also address different technical challenges, like data migration, integration in different systems. This was the second goal we have. Then the third goal we have, I would like to emphasize, is about the registries. It's a huge opportunity, really. We are really lucky we are able to do that. I think for the rare disease community, it's an absolute necessity for research, epidemiology, data, trials, of course, and this is absolute necessity. There are more than 30 ERNs registries. As I said, we're running a little bit ahead compared to the European Health Data Space Organization. We're already in the process. Some registries are already functioning, others are getting built. And it's true that one of our real goals is to be able to liaise then with what is getting set with the European Health Data Space at the time. So we really need solutions for interoperability and also for sustainability of these registries. We have some, as it was just emphasized, there has been some work with the EGP and ERICA on generating common tools for different aspects, like as governance and also consent forms, for instance, which is a point that can be really raised, to have a European consent form for these different tools. So there are still a lot of legal, ethical, regulatory affair issues. And I would imagine that the ERNs are really like it could be like an experimental lab, you know, to see what are the needs for this European health data space, where are the points where we are blocking, where we have some blockage and we have to solve, and sometimes we manage to solve them together, sometimes not. So really we see this with this respect, and we really want to collaborate with everybody as much as possible. So our registries are really operational. So the registries and the data that we are collecting are getting towards the fourth goal. I want to just address very briefly is research and trials. How are we going to be able to reuse the data? So one very important point, and I'm sure my colleagues are going to come back to this, is who is owning the data? How can we reuse this data for research purposes, academic purposes, industry purposes, trial purposes? This is something really all the coordinators are really keen to address this question. So I know there would be a lot more to say, but I have seen in the program a lot of these questions are going to be addressed now. So what is very important to keep in mind, all the ERNs are addressing different groups of diseases. So we are different, each of us, but we have common goals and we are working together. And I think the ERN coordinators group is working very well together. At the time being, we are raising, I mean, we have been carrying different surveys. We are working with the Commission. We are exchanging a lot because our future is very soon. The next 5 years, we really have to draw how we have to move forward. So we're also working on one very important point is the budget, because of course, to be able to carry on all the missions, you all know about these missions, we really need to have the ad hoc budget. So this is the end, and I'd be happy to answer any question if needed later on. Thanks.
Many thanks, Hélène. And again, I think you've outlined maybe a challenge for André, saying the ERNs could be a really great pilot group of people to work through some of the issues that you've highlighted that we need to work through in terms of the health data space. I'm now joined by Professor Franz Schäfer, who is the coordinator of the European Rare Kidney Disease Reference Network. Franz has got some really interesting insights into the data needs of an ERN with an established registry, and hopefully his insights into what lessons they've learned through that exercise and what should the Commission do to overcome some of these barriers in terms of data sharing and interoperability. Hopefully, Franz, you can shed some light on your experiences. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Yes, so I'm representing an ERN with quite a well-established registry already. We have been lucky to receive funding from in the first grant of the DG Santé for establishing an ERN-wide registry, which is now functioning very well. We have more than 12,000 patients with any kind of kidney disease recorded in this registry, which is about 40% of the patients that we see in our ERN. We opted for a centralized registry approach with a central office and with a central database. So what we did was we established an electronic case report form platform, and that has been accepted very well by the users. So we made it easy for the local users to enter data. And we did not go through any kind of national registries or medical societies registries. We primarily created a transnational EU-wide database for these patients. That took away a lot of potential problems, but it also created a number of problems. And one of the main challenges indeed was when we started, that was before 2019, there was no GDPR, but then in 2019, the GDPR regulation came into force. And this was actually quite an improvement for how we manage the data collection from the patients and how we can create informed consents. But when we try to submit our informed consent form to 35 different ethics committees in 15 different countries, we got 35 different replies. And so the problem is really that GDPR is there, but it's still interpreted in many different ways in the individual member states and by individual institutions. And that is a major, major stumbling block still for the ERN registries that are now being built. The next question is, what kind of data are we really interested in collecting? So if you are collecting data on all patients that you see in these registries with dozens or hundreds of different diagnoses, you cannot collect very detailed information, but you just collect very basic demographic information, and in a disease-specific way, just pieces of information that inform you or inform us about the quality of management and the outcomes of management in these patients. So I think we have set up a system of what we call key performance indicators that are oriented according to the guidelines that we are setting up in parallel to make sure that our treatment in the ERN centers is really guideline conforming. And that works very well. And we give feedback to the centers on a regular basis about how they are doing in their center as compared to the overall ERN average. So that kind of monitoring and benchmarking function is, I think, a very important one and a really good opportunity with these ERN registries. And then if you want to collect more detailed data for individual diseases that are of particular interest in terms of research, in terms of new drugs being developed and being applied in a population, then it's in our hands, it has proven more useful to create sub-registries for these individual diseases where you can collect more extended data. And that has also worked quite well for us. So in these sub-registries, we do detailed phenotyping, detailed outcome assessment, and also collect safety information for certain drugs. So what lessons have we learned? I talked already about the ethical legal aspects. Now we have ERICA, and in ERICA, we are trying to learn from the lessons we did in the early registries and construct informed consent forms, collaboration agreements between the central offices and the centers, data sharing agreements, etc. So we are producing templates for that will help everybody to advance quite quickly in a very harmonized and standardized way. And standardization is the other main topic and the main lesson that we have learned. I think it's absolutely crucial for the ERN registries to harmonize the data collection as much as possible by using standards and ontologies wherever we have any. And here we are working very closely with our friends from the EJPRD, and we are making good progress in standardizing the data collection across the ERNs, and then also making the databases interoperable so they can be queried. So we can do searches, data searches across the different ERN registries. And that is work in progress, but it's looking very promising. And finally, I would like to point out the issue that Elena was already alluding to. All these centralized structures will not work unless they have a very firm contribution from the local sites. So we must enable, we must empower the healthcare providers to collect the data. That's a really, really critical point. And so, you know, there are different models that we might think of applying, going through the member states, through the payers, but also, and perhaps most straightforwardly, through the European Commission, funding data collection at the site level. Without that, I think data collection will be very slow and very inefficient. And so that is something where we really have to put emphasis on to enable the healthcare providers to help us in collecting this critical data. Yeah, I think that was all I wanted to say by now.
Many, many thanks, France, and some really great lessons there around the opportunities that you can see with a central registry approach. But of course, that has its limitations in terms of being able to collect very basic data and then trying to think about how you can get more detailed in terms of individual diseases. But I can see the struggles you may have had in terms of trying to get agreement around standardizing things. And GDPR, as you say, has somehow helped, but the interpretation in 35 different countries hasn't been very helpful. So somehow maybe the Commission can think about how they can support interpretation of these guidance. But yeah, some very, very helpful and interesting lessons here. Thank you very, very much to all of our speakers so far. We're now entering into the kind of wider panel discussion, and I'm joined by a number of other panelists, very distinguished and esteemed. And I'd like to open the floor really to Dr. Anna Rath, who is the director at INSERM. And Anna, with your experience with Orphanet as well as the ERNs, what kind of challenges do you see the ERNs, how can the challenges, of the ERNs be addressed and turned into opportunities within the European health data space? Where do you see those?
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, France, and all the other colleagues, and Hélène for introducing the main challenges, because I won't repeat the main things that we all know that are the legal, organizational, and governance interoperability challenges, and semantic and technical interoperability challenges that are true for all sectors in the medical domain, but that are crucial in the rare disease domain. So I want really to go back to this opportunity that is trying to find solutions for these challenges in the rare disease domain, because rare disease, as usual, and that is not new, has worked as a model, and solving the particularities of rare diseases are really bringing solutions in general for other diseases that are not rare. So I think that is a very important point to take into account, because all the efforts that are put for rare diseases will benefit other diseases, and that is also the importance. So I really want to not only talk about Orphanet and Erns, but also of the European Joint Programme of Rare Diseases at the EJPRD, on behalf of Daria Jolkowska, that couldn't be here today, but also because I am, together with Franz Schäfer, co-leading the data infrastructure part of this program. And that is another flagship program on rare diseases that is trying to build a data infrastructure that is usable for rare disease research. And by doing that, we prioritized the work with ERNs, and that is the most advanced work we are doing in the EJPRD. hand in hand with ERN registries. So what it's about is, as Franz mentioned before, is trying to harmonize consent forms and to make them machine readable in order to accelerate the process. We are trying to harmonize access conditions, information on registries, because when dealing with the external world, registries, ERN registries, we need to set the conditions to access the data for certain purposes, included for clinical trials, included for private-public partnerships. So that is important to have this clearly and standardized in the way the ERNs are showing what they have in their registries. But most of all, we are working on helping the registries that has starting been built and those that are being built now to have the data sufficiently structured and standardized in a way that they are the data are really reusable and that are, let's say, compliant with the famous FAIR principles, so that they are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we set up a program that is called the Verification Stewardship Program, in which one data expert from the EGP, one data expert in the ERN registry, and the technical partners in both sides are working together in order to help ERNs to build the registries from the start in a way that is really compliant with the standards and trying to reduce the set of standards that are out there that could be used in a way that data are all ready to be reused in the future. So that is a program that is working very well. And by doing that, we are setting data models and the technical solutions that help providing this semantic and technical interoperability. But the most important thing, in my sense, is that what we are building as an infrastructure of data in the EJPRD for rare disease research can be scaled up and can be reused in other settings, in the European health data space, but also at local settings in national registries, and even at the hospital level. So what we are building that is rare disease specific is generic enough to be reproduced and to expand the data ecosystem for rare diseases to other contexts. And I come back to what Franz just said about the hospitals. So data are in hospitals, and a lot of data are there in an unstructured way, unstandardized way. The first thing is to try to identify rare disease patients in these records. So adopting the nomenclators and the ORFA codes in hospitals. So a close work with the help of the Commission, with the help of Orphanet and the ERNs can be done to start really working in the hospitals at the local level with local support. And many other European projects have set up results that could be reused now that are ready for being implemented. So it's kind of a question of political willingness, of funding, and the tools are there and the human support is there to help out identifying the data at the source and helping out making this data accessible through the European Health Data Space, through the European Reference Network registries and other settings. So I think that is a major topic that we really need to address, the hospital level. That for me is a clue of the strategy, and of course that is something that will for sure be built because the pieces are there. So I don't think I have any other message to say. Unless saying that the EJPRD, what we call the virtual platform, is kind of a node, a one-stop shop to enter the data spaces for research. And that could be a node also for the European Health Data Space to put this data together with other kinds of data for other kinds of knowledge generation. And that's all. Thank you.
Many, many thanks, Anna. That, again, a really helpful insight into the fact that we probably have lots of data available in lots of systems. We need to find a way of connecting it all. Inés Hernando joins us now to talk a little bit about your audience's kind of approach to this and why you think the ERN health data strategy is critical for rare disease patients from your kind of patient organization hat experience, and how could patients contribute to this initiative?
Thanks, Sheila, and thank you everyone for the discussion. It's been very interesting to listen to all of you. So first, I think that what I want to stress and underline is the obvious, that we don't have a data strategy for the ERNs. And I want to stress this because on a daily basis, the ERN coordinators are forced to make decisions, operational decisions on registry, CPMS, the Commission also. And these decisions that are really operational will have an impact down the line on what data can be collected, how data can be used, etc. So it was interesting to listen to Breo at the beginning saying, yes, we would need this kind of data. But if he would have elaborated a bit more, he would have said, yes, and we would need it to be collected in this way or in this other way in order to be able to do some cost effectiveness analysis, etc. So why do we need a data strategy for ERNs? First of all, because ERNs are a major infrastructure for care delivery and research for rare diseases, hopefully on the years to come. So what you've just heard today from Hélène and Franz when they were describing the activities of the networks is what I will call very much the internal work of the networks, what they do, which is really around knowledge sharing and creating clinical practice guidelines, etc., training. All those activities really have massive data needs, and this is what they are addressing right now. In the short, we are human, so the mission really is that one. They're looking into that, and they're looking into how to organize their data to be able to do those activities now. The thing is that for us, the ERNs, and Hélène was also mentioning this, is what they're developing, they would like the Central and Eastern European countries to adopt. And why? Because what we want to see is how these health systems enhance their capacities to treat these patients. How are we going to measure the impact that these networks are having in the 30 million people living with a rare disease? So what we would like to see is what Franz has very nicely described for his ERA and how they are benchmarking the care that their patients are receiving there, meaning the patients that are lucky enough to be treated in one of the centers of expertise that are part of Franz's network. We want to see that for all rare disease patients. We can't have that if we don't have an ERN data strategy that is very well anchored to the national ecosystem and the national data strategies. I'm not saying that the ERNs should be the ones collecting all the data or anything like that, but these two things have to be very well connected. Everyone needs to understand what are the needs of the others and who is doing what. And the other thing I want to say is that I think is also kind of important is that we have to recognize, and Hélène also mentioned it a little bit, the value of data collecting, data curating, and data management in terms of costs, budgets, etc. There's a lot of effort that still needs to be put into that because unfortunately, interoperability, I don't know, it's not there yet. So there's a lot of effort being put into that. We need to factor that in somehow. And the data strategy also. And on our contribution to implementing a future data strategy, I would say that on our side, what we have to be very clear all the time is about what are the unmet needs of our community, what are our expectations, so that we assure that the data that is being collected and how it's being used is really addressing those needs and those expectations. So we are kind of the reality check, if you want. And of course, I think that we also need to be part of imagining or creating the data governance framework so that it's acceptable for our community. And well, there's the trust, and there are some principles there that we are, they are very important for our community. And so we're keen to be part of that. It's also, and I'm not going to lie to anyone here, it's also a challenge for our community. And the same thing that Maurizio was saying about the, scientists and clinicians being more data, if you want, experts. The same happens for our community. We need to train and to educate our community so that they can make informed decisions, they can participate in this governance, they understand what's at stake. And this is it on my side, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ines. That's fantastic. HTA, Pia Ranahimu, who's a economist at the Finnish Medicines Agency. Where do you see the value for HTA and payers? We had a very short intro at the beginning from Briuk van Dam, but where can you see HTA and payers benefiting from an ERN health data strategy?
Well, thanks Sheila, thanks Ines, thanks Anna for sort of setting the stage and the others. I think the role and the importance of real-world data is different for different HTA organizations. And the HTA processes, they are also constantly developing at national level, but also in the European context. So it's actually quite difficult to give a general answer on what would be the value of this strategy, the new strategy for the HTA payer community. I think it depends on processes and how they develop. Real-world data, it can be very, very essential, but it also can be just nice to know. So as has been said, there are several stakeholders involved in the generation, management, analysis, assessment, appraisal of data and evidence, a network on a national level, and a network of networks at the European level, as was said in the beginning. And as Anna and others already pointed out, the challenge really is that there are so many barriers to interoperability between stakeholders and our processes, semantic, technical, legal, organizational, and I also listed these. So in the context of HTA, we are faced with these issues when we try to collaborate, for example, in post-launch evidence generation projects. And I think we would all benefit if we can identify and solve some of the key issues with the interoperability barriers. So for this, I see great potential in the European health data space. And for the HTA payer community and the reference networks, I think it would be important to talk about organizational interoperability and how do we achieve mutually beneficial goals. So HTA, we inform decision making, and we need data and evidence that's fit for decision making. And I think services that would benefit the HTA payer community and companies that submit their applications to us include things like metadata descriptions, timely access to data, well-described and lean processes for data permit and data request applications, and secure access to data. So sort of in summary, I think the elements of value for our HTA payer community includes the opportunity to minimize interoperability barriers and better opportunities to access fit for purpose data and evidence. And last but not the least, better opportunities to pool and analyze data across borders. That's my opinion.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Pia. Thank you. Great reflections. And it's clear that the interoperability is a real challenge from many angles and for all of the stakeholders on this panel. Marcus Kallio is a project manager at Citra and the coordinator of the joint action towards the European health data space. Marcus, I'm really keen to get your insights on the progress you've made so far in terms of developing the principles for a European health data space and how you see the ERNs fitting into those principles. And then have you identified any challenges for the ERNs that are different to the ones that we've already discussed? Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Sheila. Well, first of all, I've been honored to be part of this panel, very distinguished speakers and so much good information about the ERNs. And as Andre said in the beginning, ERNs are also close to my heart as I was the one who made the call for tender for the CPMS back in 2016. So you can blame me if it doesn't work properly. And I must say that it's very difficult to make the call for tender for that with all the requirements that you had and that part. So, but I'm also heard that some cases has been exchanged. So at least it's a progress. So as you said, we are working with DATAS to help the Commission and the member state in this setting up the European Health Data Space and the future regulation that comes next year. And we are working with the governance, with the data quality, infrastructure, citizen engagement, and the sustainability of it. Now you asked that the principles of the European Health Data Space. We don't have principles of our own, or we don't have sort of goals of our own for the European Health Data Space. It is a project and by the European Commission and is based on the data strategy that was published in 2019 and 2020. But we are there to help and provide options for the European Commission to work towards the functioning European data space. But I think the discussion has already raised multiple very good points. I would like to highlight one that maybe has not been said yet regarding I think the ERNs, they form a very good like a communication material for the ESDS. And when I explain what I do for my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, it's one of the difficult thing that you could do, try to explain what's the European Health Data Space is. So I use the rare diseases for that. I say that no country has enough data for specific rare diseases. So that's why we need the European collaboration. So I think you should be the spearhead for the European Health Data Space and really a use case. So how we could do collaboration in Europe. Now there has been discussion whether the ERNs or the CPMS or whatever registry you have could be a node for the ERN for the European Health Data Space. There's a lot of discussion about this federated network and nodes, and so I don't have an answer for you today for this, but I think this is it's relevant that the question is on the table and need to be solved by the EHDS, so that when we have the regulation, we have an answer for this question. Whether you are a node of your own, whether you and we have the similar question for other transnational registries, such as the EMA registries that they are holding, the Darwin network, the ECDC registries, and so on. So it's not just the ERNs. We need to solve the situation of these transnational registries and how do we get permissions to use the data and so on, so that you don't need to think about that in your daily lives. Professor Schaffer pointed out a very good example of the problems that you have. When you are starting a study, there's like 20 or so ethical evaluations. We definitely need only one. There should be mutual recognition of these ethical evaluations. So if it's approved in one country, it works for other. Otherwise, this just doesn't work. Now the data strategy for ERNs, I think what Ines said is very accurate. I think you should have a common strategy for data for all ERNs. And of course, it starts with the primary side. So how do you collect data? What data you collect? The nomenclatures were mentioned by Anna and the author codes. I think it starts from there. Of course, as always, the secondary starts with the primary. So how do you collect data? and you have your common process for doing that. Now, on the secondary side, I would look at from the research perspective, not from the Erns perspective that much. So how does the process look like if I'm a person who wants to do the study? How do I know what data you have? How the data discovery part, what data, how much, and so forth. How do I ask the permission? It should be simple. One permission process, streamlined for the researcher perspective. Then how do you prepare the data for the researcher? Should be the anonymization, pseudonymization should be same for all ERNs. Not everybody thinking on individually how it's done. How you provide the access to data, the safe environment for looking into data. You should have one guideline for that. How is it happening? Maybe we can even have that a similar guideline for the whole EHDS. But if not, then especially for at least for the ERNs, so that there's no 24 different data storage things, but it's one kind of secure environment where the data is accessed. And finally, I think how the results have been disseminated and how you can reproduce or validate the research that has been done. So you might need to be thinking, how do you keep the evidence, or how do you make sure that the data is available for others to validate what has been published. So these are my first thought on that, but I think a very good discussion that you have organized today.
Many thanks, Marcus. I think it's clear that the what and the how and the information exchange across all of these different agencies and collaborators is the biggest challenge. I believe Andre has had to step off the call now, but Martin, are you in his stead? I'm going to put you on the spot now. Martin, what kind of considerations has the Commission initially thought about around any policy solutions to this? And are there any conversations going on around how this could be funded?
Thank you, Sheila, and good afternoon, everybody. So, as Andre unfortunately could not stay until the end of the discussion, I will try to take up this difficult task and replace him. And I have to say, I mean, this discussion today was very interesting, and a lot of very interesting, I mean, subjects were raised. And I have to say, I mean, it is very timely. I mean, we have heard about things that are working, about specific examples where the progress is made quite quickly. Franz mentioned the example of his registry in particular. I mean, we have patient cases being discussed and patients' data being exchanged via the CPMS and so on. But we have also heard a lot of examples or issues or challenges. I mean, things that can be improved or should be improved for the system to work much better in the future and to work for everybody. Because I mean, this is certainly the ultimate goal and the ultimate objective, to improve the situation for all rare diseases patients in the EU. But if I say, I mean, that it is very timely, I mean, to have these type of discussions. It's not only because we are working on the proposal on the European Health Data Space that will come up next year, and we are finalizing now the impact assessment stage and then the stakeholder consultation stage. So I mean, there is still time, I mean, to take all this input into account. But also, I mean, the ERNs, they have been established 4 years ago. We are reaching the fifth year of their existence, and it is the right time, I mean, to look back at what was achieved in these last 5 years, but also, I mean, start considering possible and potential adjustments of the systems or improvements of the systems for the future. And we are having 2 important initiatives also specifically on the Erns in place. So we have the ongoing evaluation of the legal framework. So the evaluation of the cross-border healthcare directive in line with the better regulation principles, which is looking at the legal framework and the policy framework for the Erns, not only for the Erns, but the Erns are an important part of it, and is considering whether the framework is still fit for purpose or whether we need some adjustments. And we also have the legal obligation to conduct a first periodic performance evaluation of the ERN, so of the networks and all their members, 5 years after their establishment. So this big exercise will start next year, and the final results will be available in early 2023. Once we appoint the independent evaluation body for the exercise. And as part of these two evaluation processes, we will, I mean, certainly, and we are already looking at the issues of data management within the networks, the issues related to the use of the CPMS. I mean, we have heard, I mean, you know, from the ERN coordinators today, I mean, that, you know, there are certain issues that need to be or should be improved, and we are working very closely with them, because we want to make sure that the networks and the healthcare providers, as the final users of the system, are happy with the improvements that we will put in place. We will also, I mean, look at the issue of the registries. It is fair to say that some networks are making very good progress on establishing the registries, but then there are others where the progress is advancing in a much slower pace, and we need to look at all these issues that were raised today. So the legal, you know, challenges and legal obstacles caused partly by the Gdpr, which is a great instrument for guaranteeing, I mean, the rights of individuals for protection of their privacy and data protection. But I think probably it's also fair to admit that, for example, for researchers or users of data for secondary purposes, the situation is rather complex, and also partly due to the fact that the GDPR is being interpreted differently in different member states, and that's an area where hopefully also the proposal on the European health data space will bring some clarity. I should also mention, because I mean, you asked specifically, Sheila, about the funding, and I know that that's an issue that is raised very often, and that's of interest for many stakeholders. So I need to mention the new EU for Health program that was adopted earlier this year. So it's a new financial instrument for the upcoming financial period from 2021, from this year until 2027. That is, you know, replacing the current health programs with a budget which is significantly higher than what we had available at the European level for health policy in the previous years. So this is a big achievement and big opportunity, I should say. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that the additional money that we have now available are spent wisely and in a most efficient way. So there are opportunities, but we now need to get things right for the upcoming, you know, let's say 5 years period. So we will now be focusing on the evaluation exercise, and we'll try to draw the right conclusions and come up with the right proposals for the future. Thank you.
Many thanks, Martin. That was a really helpful summary of all the activities that are going on. But as you say, it's the perfect time to be hearing these conversations and listening and understanding what the challenges are. I am delighted to also invite to the conversation Vittoria Carraro. Vittoria, you represent UCOPE, and we welcome you to this panel. It would be really useful to hear your observations on the conversations we've had so far, and I believe you're going to talk to us about a particular initiative that you've been looking into.
Yes, thanks a lot, Sheila, and thank you for bringing me into the conversation. Obviously, I've been listening attentively to all that has been said so far, and actually I particularly like the metaphor at the beginning that Professor Dolphus, I think, mentioned about exiting the infancy of the European reference networks, and I suppose getting into a more mature phase. If you look at how this partnership how this project has been moving since the inception, it has gone remarkably fast. If we think of health project shelf life pre-COVID. So really we have an opportunity to step up even further. Yeah, so UCOPE has been included in the advisory board of the project ERICA. We are very, very glad that that happened. We are really ready to contribute. Some of the speakers have alluded to the project. In fact, we have this opportunity, I would say, to further integrate the governance and create further synergies among the ERNs through this project and through all the work that has been done by and is continued to be done by the colleagues. So I think what is really I would say our stand as industry, as some of you may know, UCOPE represents 130 companies, roughly half of them, they work on rare diseases. So really this is very important to us. And I would say that we are really ready to step up and to contribute where we can. And so every time we speak of rare disease, every time we speak in particular of high unmet need, it comes over and over again, this idea that really the ERN and the health data space could be a platform to step up partnerships between industry and the public sector and all the stakeholders involved, appreciating that there are many challenges, that there are many parts of the framework that are at different speeds, at a different level of maturity. So that is obviously one big gap that doesn't make things easy, but not necessarily not worth trying. So I think that that was my remark and the thing that I took up from the conversation, and maybe something to bounce back to the colleagues also is what would be the next step to look at that partnership option, to look at how to use efficiently this platform, and obviously how we can contribute as a sector.
Many thanks, Victoria. Maurizio, you've listened intently to all of the observations. I wonder if I could bring you into the conversation.
Well, Sheila, thank you very much. I mean, I took about 5 pages of notes because, I mean, this discussion was really probably, I have to say, not the first time that we have it, but it is the first time that really we have all these stakeholders all together, and it is extremely important to see how everybody is setting the scene. And this is really the very first time, because even we have a representative of the Commission, representative of the companies, and patient organization and Erns. So at this point, we have really a complete scene. Of course, this is a big, as I said at the beginning, this is an incredible challenge. And indeed, what Andrei was stating at the very beginning is that we need to have an interaction with the patient. We need also to highlight a little bit how we want to treat this data, the ownership of the data, and how we can use the data. We are here to discuss about the strategy. So I think that what we want in the next 15 minutes is probably to have from our guest a one-sentence message that is actually going through the possibility of drafting a sort of decalogue of what we need to do to have this strategy going. Because I think that the challenge is huge. It is huge because we have 7,000 diseases, so we need to find a strategy that is useful for all rare diseases. We have 7,000 diseases that are different phenotypically, even inside the same disease. And we have patients generating data that can be, important for everybody, but need to be selected. So I think that it will be extremely important to hear, our colleagues, what they think would be important and necessary to start working. We have heard about DGP, ERICA, the interoperability program. The sustainability of the registry is a major problem because, I mean, these registries are working now. The MetaBRN is one of the 5, together with the ERCnet of France, that started, and we really need, to have a sustainability plan. So I would make a round, you know, to understand exactly what the opinion from the different opinion leader, you know, about what they really think the strategy should be for. I don't know whether we want to start from France and Hélène, or from
maybe Franz, given your experience already, it would be great if you were to start with your suggestions.
Well, I think it's very important to speak about sustainability for the registries. We have some ideas how that could be accomplished. Part of a major role, of course, could and should, and I'm sure will be played by the European Commission. But there's also other potential resources that could help with the sustainability and even expansion of the registries. And that is the collaboration with industry, because real-world evidence data is what the commercial researchers are also very much interested in. It's data that we have. And if we find models how to collaborate with industry in the secondary use of the information, some of the information that we are collecting, that could be of mutual benefit and really help with the sustainability of these projects.
And if I may, Franz, what is your opinion regarding the quality of the data that we are generating? Because this is also very important.
Yeah, of course. As Ines was pointing out, it's very important to make sure that data quality is adequate. But there are tools that we can use, by online plausibility checks, by systematic logical checks on the data that we can use in centralized data management units to make sure, the data is what it's supposed to be. And I think it's an important topic, but there are also solutions for that issue available.
Thanks. Ines, where would you see?
Well, what I think is, first of all, I think that we need to carve out a space to have this strategic discussion, and that this is a multi-stakeholder discussion, let's say, not just industry. Regulators need to be around the table, HTA, the Ministries of Health, etc. We already described back in 2019 what that could look like in the paper that we published. And we haven't been able to carve out that space. Could that be ERICA? I don't know. I'm not sure about that, because in ERICA, what I'm seeing is very much operational decisions being taken, and I'm not sure if that's the place. But what I know is that we don't have one today. So here, I guess my call for today will be: let's carve out that space, because it's very much needed.
Thanks, Ines. Anna, what would be your request for us in terms of considering next steps?
So I totally support Ines' last comment, because we had in the past an expert group on rare diseases at the Commission that was really multi-stakeholder, maybe with efficiency or efficacy problems, but still it's not all or nothing, and we really need to have, maybe for specific purposes, specific multi-stakeholder working groups, in order to make sure that all the efforts that are being done, including funding efforts by the Commission in the past and currently, we are capitalizing on, and we are not reinventing wheels all the time. So there are things that are reusable and as Franz said, that can be expanded and should be sustained as well, in order to support Erns in their quality of data in their partnerships, etc., etc. But we cannot restart again and again. I think that we really need to put all the key stakeholders together but then there is a sustainability topic that is the big one because it is the same discussion in all the projects, and that is and we still don't have a model that allows entities that are not legal entities to continue their efforts in sustaining the activity that is needed for research to progress, therapies development, so R&D to progress, and that should be sustained. And for that, there are models that could be implemented. So a specific discussion and creative discussion on that should be fostered, in my sense.
Many thanks, Anna. We only have a few more minutes left, so I'm going to ask Pia from a HTA perspective. Given all of the conversations we've heard, obviously we want to create the right research environment. We want to address unmet needs. What would be your ask, given that you're one of the very important stakeholders within this for the health data space as a next step for you?
Well, I think it's important to provide easy opportunities to test and pilot the use of data and really to create processes to collect learnings, and not just the good learnings, but really the do not do's also, because I think that might be an issue that we don't share so often and as much as we would need to. So a safe environment to share learnings, a learning network, perhaps. Thanks.
Many thanks, Pia. As I am conscious of time, Martin, I wonder if I could go to you very quickly in terms of any next steps that you've already outlined, a few that the Commission are undertaking, but anything else that you think you can take away from this as a reflection?
Yeah, thank you. And I will not repeat what I mentioned already in terms of the next step that we are planning to do at the Commission level. But I would like to come back to one of the points or issues that was mentioned today. But I would like to emphasize it even more, and that's the need for we're talking a lot about interoperability. I mean, interoperability is important at the European level. So, for example, between or among the registries of the Erns and so on, and that's where our colleagues in JRC are already doing some useful work, and for example, Erika will also help to bring this forward. But we also need to bear in mind that there is work or initiatives ongoing at the national or regional level. And we also need to make sure that this is connected to all the activities of the Erns. So, for example, with regard to the CPMS, one important change that we are planning to do is to now rely on an open source development and making the CPMS later available also for similar systems if they are going to be developed at the national level. And this is what currently we are already hearing from some of the member states, that they are interested in developing similar systems at the national level. But this is very closely linked to the issue of the better integration of the Erns in the national healthcare system. And we are planning to have a joint action starting next year, where we will support the member states in getting together with all the other stakeholders and really developing concrete solutions and concrete proposals on making the Erns an integral part of their national healthcare systems. And I think that can also help to solve many of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. I think we've heard some very, very insightful and interesting opportunities here for the European health data space. Particularly, I think we've heard that ERNs are ready and poised to be pilots for the Commission to support the development of some of the strategic and policy decisions. We are obviously challenged with the interoperability and how do we create the right environment for us to collaborate across all of the member states whilst respecting individual member state approaches and understanding those. But I think we've got to remember that we're all in it here for patients with rare diseases, and how do we ensure that we are collaborating to break down some of these barriers and work together to create the right environment for this, for the success of the European health data space, which has huge opportunities for research, for new innovative treatments, for supporting patients with rare diseases across the entirety of Europe. And of course, I know we've talked about resource, sustainability, and how we ensure that all of those things are in play. I wanted to thank the panel for some momentous and fantastic insights. It's not an easy task for all of us, and hopefully this provides us with a really good platform to continue to work together and start to support the Commission in terms of some of the work they need to do. And I commend you for all the work that you've all done so far, and thank you for all your time. Thank you to all the attendees who have listened intently. I hope that you found this very useful and insightful for yourselves. The Real World for Decisions team will be taking some of the learnings back, and hopefully Martin will be able to maybe share with you some of the insights from this session for you to consider going forward. Wishing everybody a lovely afternoon and thank you very much for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.